The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. This could be the aspiring advertising professional looking to break in and find their first job. This could be for the current advertising professional looking to break through and find that next promotion. And this could be for the brand side folks that are looking to break in and find their next agency partner. Essentially, we do this every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. And we have a great episode for you all today. We sit down and interview Sam Shepard. Sam Shepard is the Chief Creative Officer for Uncommon Creative Studio in New York. And we are in the office in their location, which is in Soho. And we have a good time with Sam Shepard. Being from Chicago originally and being in the ad scene there, we are very well aware of Sam Shepard and all the great work he did at Leo Burnett, including the Lost Class. So we talk about the Lost Class, his transition from Leo Burnett to what he's doing now with Uncommon is breathtaking. It's really interesting stuff. And his lessons on passion and hustle will get you out of bed ready to rock and roll and crush whatever briefs, whatever challenges you're facing. This will be that spark, and we know you'll enjoy it. So Sam Shepard, breaking and entering. If you like what you hear, please head over to Apple and leave a nice written review along with 5 stars, 5 stars on Spotify. Follow us on LinkedIn. Engage with us, because the more you do, the more we can continue to grow and give you better content every single week. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Geno Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey.
Good evening. We are live on the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast here with Sam Shepard, Chief Creative Officer of Uncommon here in New York. This place is awesome. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm pumped to chat with you guys.
This is going to be the best conversation of all time in podcast history here.
Yeah, let's do it.
We have to address that we have one mic here, and that's on me. I forgot to bring one of the power cords, so we're rocking one mic.
Right, which means uncomfortably close conversations.
That's how we do it.
Yep.
That's how we do it. It's going to make for good content. So, Sam, I want to talk about you. I want to talk about Uncommon. I want to talk about some of your best work, maybe some of your worst work you've ever produced too.
Oh, no.
I just laid that one down for the first time.
Yep.
You just heard about that.
Yep.
And then advice for aspiring creatives, and then maybe some advice to some of the current professionals out there. Maybe some of the marketers that are listening want to work with you.
Yeah, great.
So
Love it.
cool.
Yeah, very cool.
We'll start off at the top here. Tell us about you. Tell us about Uncommon New York. What's going on here? And we're in Soho, I believe.
We're in Soho. We're in the heart of Soho, Wooster and Spring Street. Yeah, a little bit about Uncommon. I'm very sensitive about not doing the used car salesman plug on our shop here, but I am very biased. Uncommon is incredible. It's Uncommon Creative Studio. We call it studio for a purpose, right? I think like everything we do, we have a maker mentality, a maker culture. But in a nutshell, Uncommon was founded, I think now 8 years ago in London. By 3 different founders, Natalie, Lucy, and Nils. And I think like of all the agencies that started up over the last 5-10 years, I really think that they had a chance to build a place the right way. Every single decision of building Uncommon, I think, was very choiceful and planned out. And I think their vision was to create the type of creative studio that they wish existed in the world.
Okay.
Which is really unique. There's a lot of different ways to unpack what that means. But I think for me, the best shorthand on that is throughout my whole career being at different agencies, every different agency has their mantra like their phrase up on the wall. But you never really see that come to life in day-to-day creative process. Whereas at Uncommon, we have a lot of those mantras, but they're so inherent to every single detail in the way we work on a day-to-day basis. That's like really, really refreshing.
Yeah. What's one of those mantras you really dig that you embody?
Yeah. There's a ton of them. So I also have to be careful not to overwhelm. But I think right off the top of my head, one of those is later means never. Right. So I think like that is such an interesting guiding principle where a lot of times they're like, okay, like, yeah, let's set up a meeting tomorrow. Let's put that off to another time when it's actually very freeing to go. A lot of times the best things happen when you actually do it now and don't wait and you just roll up your sleeves. So I think a simple phrase like that really influences like the general body language of the whole studio.
I like that. So you think that should be on a t-shirt? Do you guys wear that around?
Well, that's the thing.
Get it tattooed?
We have a ton of merch. Right? We're big into merch here. So you guys are going to get some
jackets pumped.
Some bags, and I think little mint
containers. We need that.
Yeah, but it's I know those. I know like there's a lot of phrases like that sound cheesy, but again, I think I love how they come into actual practice day to day. And another phrase is, no matter how good of an idea we get to, there's almost the uncommon layer that's placed over the top, which is, yeah, but how is that going to be a reference point in culture that's still talked about 10 to 20 years from now outside of the advertising bubble? So even saying something like that is like, oof, that forces you to totally rethink, make different decisions, and if anything, do things that are unexpected.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard to do.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like for the aspiring advertiser, somebody's just getting into this business, like just making the ad trades, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And like getting a headline in Ad Age or Ad Week. And as a PR person, like that's a good win. But then you create something that breaks through the ad trades, gets into major publications, on news. That's like a real testament. But to then also last 5-10 years after, like that's a big goal to have.
It is. Yeah. And I think it's just placing a very different bar and ambition on the power of creativity. Like we don't believe it's just for like the confines of advertising. It's way bigger than that. So I of all the different Uncommon projects, the ones that start to be not defined by advertising, but getting into architecture, getting into spatial design, so many other like full-length documentaries. I think that's the good stuff.
Yeah. So can you talk about some of the clients that you're working with here, either in New York or in general, like in London with Uncommon, that you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you can't say Uncommon without, I think, first mentioning British Airways. That's one. And like of all the things I'm continually inspired by at Uncommon, it's I think the breadth and different styles of clients across the board. I think for like degree of difficulty, I think the most impressive one is a British Airways, right? Like I think in advertising in general, I think it's easier to do little quick hits on smaller brands, but to go up and totally redefine like a iconic British brand like British Airways and really just start to do some of the best work, not even in advertising, work that everyone around the world is seeing on a scale like that to me is like the pinnacle. That is like the most impressive thing. So I think especially as we build Uncommon in New York, we're 1 year in, I think looking to also translate that same magic here. Not only on British Airways, we have some other incredible clients that I think are at that same scale. So one of those is SiriusXM.
Yep.
I think again for us that is, it kind of fits into a criteria of I'll call it like chip on our shoulder of going in and helping brands that deserve to have people take a second look at them, that have kind of a built up over the years a certain preconceived notion, and how can we flip that and inject new life.
So what are they asking? Can I ask you that? What are you going to be working on with Sirius? And
yeah, Yeah, so SiriusXM 1 year ago, that was a founding client for the studio.
Yeah.
And I think that was
In New York specific?
in New York.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that was a great example because I do believe that's the best that Uncommon does. It was kind of the full soup to nuts of kind of starting as a brand redesign, going in and again, we call it like body language. How do you not only like influence their identity, their logo, but also just the way that they have confidence internally, right?
Yeah.
Like the way that they address their employees, the way that they feel about themselves inside out, all the way up to like a massive brand relaunch during the Oscars. So I think like design all the way up through like every single part of the funnel, that's something that we couldn't be more proud of kind of the injecting that new life into what is an iconic American brand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around forever, but like, I think, that's been a really fun one.
Love it. Any other brands that you're excited or on the radar here in New York?
There's top secret ones.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, you can get into those.
We could use this podcast to announce to the world. No, in all in all honesty,
There's called breaking entering. That could be breaking news.
No, there's a couple that we couldn't be more excited to announce. Literally any day now. We've been hard at work. But yeah, there's like a whole variety. I think again, one end of the spectrum, a SiriusXM type, like massive client. And a huge shout out to all those clients there that couldn't be more trusting in that process. On the opposite end of the spectrum, though, I think our ability to influence culture with ideas that come straight from the studio. I don't know if there's anyone out there. We love looking at something like the Art Collective abbreviated Mischief, of like their ability to, like, I think lean into that maker mentality, right? Like, some of the best ideas could and should come from us. And sometimes we don't need a client to be able to have a say on culture to get out in the world. So again, the other end of that spectrum is something like a Rat Boot, or other almost like love letter projects from the studio to New York.
Yeah. So you brought it up. It's right behind us.
It's looking at me.
Right. So talk about the Rat Boot, and because that was like a brand activation to promote the agency and launch this studio, correct?
Yeah.
So can you give some context here, and can we bring it up? Do you want to bring it to the table?
We can. The problem is it's insanely heavy.
Really? Oh, you got it.
There's the Rat Boot. Yeah, and I know this looks ridiculous, but I think it started with a hypothesis from Uncommon's founder Nils and I of something that's so important to the studio is fame. Like we believe there's a disproportionate amount of return on investment if something becomes famous. And so like we spend a lot of time meticulously calculating like how to get that fame on anything we put out in the world, whether or not it's a simple design all the way up to a brand relaunch. We said to ourselves, like, as much as we talk about fame, we have to also hypothesize and prove that out ourselves, just coming from the studio. So one of those things was, okay, we're launching Uncommon in New York. How could we inject fame, for instance, around New York Fashion Week? And so we said to ourselves, an inherent tension point around that week is the amount of highfalutin fashionistas that descend upon the city. At the same time, these $2,000 stiletto heels are inches away from a rap population of over 3 million. Like, that's an interesting dichotomy and a tension point that we have to find a way to comment on. And so this idea was born. It was one of the worst sketches I've ever drawn in my entire life. I showed it to Nils. He's like, great, we should do that. And so we brought it to life. I think it was incredible how much traction it picked up. One influencer captured the Rat Boot on the corner outside the studio in that post. I think now it has 160 million views, which to put that in comparison, Taylor Swift's top post, I think, has 70 million views. So to get that kind of traction in 24 hours on the same day as the Super Bowl, was really interesting to us of ways that we can flex our own ideas to make it ourselves and ultimately get it out in the world and then move on to the next project.
So what was in here then? There was
taxidermy rats, and that was an important decision. We went back and forth on whether or not they should be live rats, but we made the call to use taxidermy rats. So no rats were harmed.
Where do you find a taxidermy rat?
We had an incredible production team sourcing the entire city, and they found one. I can't remember the name of the shop. They were expensive.
Nothing like a good producer.
Yeah,
like
yes, yeah.
But your crazy ideas, they just figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it. So love that. So that was really the announcement for you all. Is that accurate then?
Yeah, I think so. I think listen, I know the London studio gets a ton of noise. I think how prolific they are of all different types of ideas. They have a great way of staying top of mind with the work that I think is never addy. It's always almost avant-garde, or it's always like a refreshing twist on a classic approach to idea-led creative. So I think in New York, we want to just translate that same energy of constantly staying top of mind, and if anything, the maker mentality of we are not going to wait for anyone or any client to get ideas out into the world.
Yeah. Any other agencies from back in the day that used to do this that you get some inspiration from? There you go. You can put this.
Yeah. This is making me uncomfortable. Over here.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's funny, whether or not it was an agency in general, or I was always just a fan of people that were figuring out a way to still act that way at agencies, sometimes against the odds. So it's less about, I think agencies have hit it for let's say a 5-year stretch over time, but you can kind of trace it back to the people that were doing it, and that's the thread.
And that's the big advice we tell people and listeners, you should try to find a place to work by the people, and study the ad trades, study the award annuals, and see who the physical humans are that made the ads that you like, and go work with them. And I understand from Frank's interview, Frank Cartagena, that you two worked together for quite some time.
Yeah.
And your mentor, probably you're still close with, is Meno, correct? And you kind of followed him wherever he said.
Yeah.
You guys went because you wanted to be with him and learn with him. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And he just announced something too, where he's at, right?
He's the global chief creative officer of Iris.
Okay.
Which is awesome.
Iris Worldwide, is that what it's?
Yeah. So
what is that a holding company owned? It's gotta be.
It's a great question.
I
gotta do a little more research, but it's another massive move from Meno, and quick shout out to those guys. Loved them to death. They were so important in shaping who I am coming up through the ranks. But if anything, I think their energy, their outlook on life was the most important thing. I think they were constantly looking for ways to challenge themselves, to look at our own portfolios, and if anything, look at, well, what have we not done before? What are the things that scare us? And go and find those types of projects to just keep expanding and never having a set style of work.
Yeah. But can it be nice sometimes when you just you get into a good agency, you get high up in there, you got a couple wins under your belt from a while ago, you can get complacent, you can start that work-life balance, you don't have to try as hard.
Yeah.
Start racking in more money.
You can.
That seems pretty nice to me.
There's no knock on that. It's very nice. But I think that's the scariest thing on the planet. If anything, there's something in my gut that has always kept me from doing that. Again, it's not for everyone, but I just think that the worst thing you can do is lean towards things that are comfy or safe. And I just don't think that's where the best opportunities are.
Got it. So let's kick it back then. And I want to ask you about, at what point in your life did you decide you wanted to make ads for a living?
God, great question. So, how far back do I go?
When did you remember? What were you wearing? What were you doing? When you're
I think my biggest fear is weighing on too long about stuff that doesn't really matter. So I want to try to get.
Yeah, we'll talk about that moment that you figured out and then how you broke in.
Cool. Okay, so to sum it up, I was always really good at art. Like that was the one subject, no matter what, if it was sculpture, drawing, painting, anything like that, it just came naturally to me. So I always use that as a cheat to like boost my GPA, or at least just to have one class where I just felt like I felt happy. I love doing that. And so I think the risk though is I always had parents that were like, yeah, you can't do that for a living now. And that was always in the back of my head. And in college, again, I took a ton of fine arts classes. Those are the ones I loved. But I had one teacher who ripped me a new one, and it was the toughest conversation I've ever had, but it was ultimately the best. And I was doing really well in this painting class, and I'll never forget this. At the end, she came up to me and she just laid into me. She said, Sam, you have a choice right now. You either drop everything, you drop out of school, you get a full-time studio on your own, you dedicate your entire life to just painting, or you stop half-assing it altogether and you do something different. And I was like, oof. But it couldn't have been clearer right then. Okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go all in and just be an artist, because I had so much passion for maybe like the ADD side of me of like, oh, I love film and I love graphic design. I love photography, all these other things that, and if anything, it was just such a pivotal point saying, okay, if it's not full on fine art, what else is out there? And at that time, I randomly stumbled upon Miami Ad School.
Yeah.
I had done 4 years undergrad in Philadelphia, and no knock to Philadelphia. I was looking for a sunnier city, a different change in scene. So I went and spent a year in Miami Beach at Miami Ad School.
Yeah.
I did like 1 year there, just learning all the basics, like art direction, photography, all that.
How did you find out about Miami Ad School? Like, how did you connect that dot?
Yeah, I totally random. I was getting ready to graduate. It was 2008. The recession had hit. So I'm like, oof, like maybe I don't want to be looking for a job right now. Could I do a little more school, but just focus a little more on some of the stuff I had done, but just not in depth in undergrad. So I just randomly started looking up portfolio school. I don't know how I did that.
Yeah.
But at that time, the options were really slim, and Miami Beach came up. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's a 2-year program.
Yeah.
But you did it for 1 year.
What first year is like the base school.
Yeah.
That was when Miami Ad School was still on the beach.
Okay.
In that 1 year, I think it took off probably 10 years of my life in general, the amount of partying I did. I had the best time of my life. But I think early on in that first year, I go, ooh, the real magic of this is year 2. I go, the ability to be able to travel the world and get an inside look at all these different agencies. Something told me that's was like the real benefit of Miami Ad School. That network was insane at the time.
Still is, yeah.
Yeah. So I took them up on that. I went, okay, first one, I'm going to go to Moscow. I'm going to go to Sochi and Sochi.
Okay.
I immediately followed that, and I went to Brazil. I went to Ogilvy, Sao Paulo.
That's a good one.
Yeah, which was awesome. And even that one, I lucked out. I was the only intern. I got there right at the same time that Anselmo Ramos was doing Dove Real Beauty sketches with that team. So it was a time and a place. I got my ass kicked. I don't think I got one idea through, but it did show me that there's a whole other world out there of talent, work ethic, ferocity that it opened my eyes. I took that with me going back to New York, finishing the program, and I think it lit a fire into my ass. I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't just want to be average at this. There's other people out here that are infinitely more talented and have that same work ethic that kind of set the different bar.
Yeah, it's so important to understand and get that ammunition of who's good and what's good work and develop that taste. And you did that. You went direct to source. But today, I think with the internet and going online, you can look up all these great ads. There's lovetheworkmore.com.
Yeah.
which is free. I think you can build that taste also without having to go and intern in person, but it definitely helps to see that style.
Yeah, and it's just different. Like the things that you'll learn in person are like way more of like hustle mentality, or like seeing the intangibles. Yeah, like you're seeing the people that are staying there late, or you see that
Brazilians are,
oh my god, their work ethic is unmatched, and so you see that the greatness never comes from the formal brief coming to your desk and you nail it in a 9 to 5. It's just not. It's not how it works. Greatness comes from all the stuff that comes after that.
So you probably had two choices there as well. You saw all this, like the intangibles. You saw all the work. You saw all the great people. I mean, Dove Real Beauty Sketches. You saw.
Yeah.
You probably could. This could either light a fire or scare the shit out of you, and you want to quit.
Yeah. No.
So you took the right
it's funny,
route.
and there's no shame in saying, like, at the time it scared the shit out of me. I was paralyzed with. I mean, the language barrier was one thing. Like, I think. Yeah, like, but in general, I just didn't even know where to start. Like, I was in awe of how again, like, I use the term ferocity. It's like the motor that agency had, like a collective drive to do the best work in the world, to set those reference point type ideas. And Dove Real Beauty Sketches was one of those. Like, it stands the test of time. For a while, it was like the most viewed ad of all time. So yeah, at the time, I didn't meet the challenge, but I was able to, I think, digest it a little bit when I got back to the States and be like, you know what, I can learn from this and not let it get me down.
And what were those next steps? So you get back to New York, you said,
yeah,
and you have this fire going within. What do you do next?
I think I started just taking more risks. I think if anything, I took with me that nothing was going to just happen. I had to make it happen. I had to take risks. And the first risk was, sadly dropping out of Miami ad school. And, that was a big deal because, I was, slightly excommunicated at the time. They did not want you to drop out early, but
that makes sense.
I got an email to do like a 2-day freelance design gig at Mother New York. And so for a 2-day freelance gig, I dropped everything, dropped out of school, and said, all right, I'm all in. Yeah. Which at the time
you broke in.
I got in. I said, you know what, this is worth it. I'm going to take a shot. And those 2 days turned into a week extension, another week extension. I worked my ass off. And it was at that time that I was right around a couple people doing incredible work. One was Jerry Hoke was there at the same time.
Yeah.
Jed Grossman, Rob Baird, who's down at Preacher. They probably don't remember me, but just to see those guys and be in that mix for a short period of time again, in hindsight, I'm like, ooh, I made such a good decision to take a risk, drop out, but that propelled, I think, the next couple of years.
2 days you were supposed to work.
Just 2 days, yeah.
And then they kept how many weeks did they extend you?
I think it was like 4 months total. So I kept it going.
And that was, how does that even work? Like, you didn't do your job, so they had to like,
well, yeah, it was funny. Yeah, because I was
needs more time.
No, I was right.
Working with you.
I was right out of ad school. So if anything, I think hopefully what they sensed was just the hustle. Like, I probably didn't have the skills, but I think, like, maybe from my athletic background, I can at least take a thorough coaching. Like, you can light me up as much as you want. I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna figure out what the mistakes were. I'm constantly just gonna outwork everyone. That was a decision I made and I was just out of ad school. They gave me web banner assignments, but I would come back with the most mind-blowing web banners they've ever seen. And I would give them 10 options, and I was just gonna refuse to take it easy or just do the basics. But yeah, I at the same time I was looking for full time. And so I took a full-time gig right after that at DEB, New York. And that's that was kind of the start of kind of the next 10 years in New York.
And just like references from there, from Mother New York to DDB New York, how did you make that jump there?
At the time, this was the one decision in my life where I followed the money. DDB at the time,
You need a full-time job, like
full-time job. Yeah.
you gotta get in.
And they threw a lot of money at me and my eyes lit up, and I didn't ask enough questions about what I was going to be doing, but I knew DDB was a great agency. So I took it. And that first year,
An art director was the
art director.
Art
Yeah.
director.
Yeah. And I was kind of alone as an art director.
And you didn't have a partner?
I didn't. And that's, I was there 1 year before Frank came in.
What were you doing that 1 year then?
The worst work of my career.
You gotta have somebody to
That was,
bounce around with.
yeah, 100%. But if anything, coming off of like the high at Mother and some of these internships around the world, I think that's when the reality hit me of, if I'm not really careful of the choices that I make, you can end up doing work and a whole year can go by and all of a sudden you wake up and go, oh my God, I have nothing to show for it. And that was that first year at DDB where.
But it's your first year in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if anything, I think the self-awareness to know that it doesn't have to be this way, or if you don't like it, it's still your choice. You can do things to get out of it. And so I spent 1 year designing State Farm web banners. And to this day, I can still tell you the exact hex number of State Farm red. And it was funny at the time, like I was literally being used like a studio designer where my associate creative directors at the time were holding me to the pixel of the guidelines of snapping things to a grid in Photoshop. They would have post-mortem meetings if I was 1 pixel off for these web banners.
Stop it.
It was brutal. And finally I got to the end of 1 year and I go, what am I doing? Like this is not what I signed up for. This is not idea driven.
Especially after you saw Mother and
oh my God,
travel around the world.
I had seen the dream and all of a sudden this was not the dream. So, fate worked out. It was at that exact moment. My partner, Frank, just walked into my office and they said, this is your new partner. He was in Boston that they hired without asking me.
Yep.
And I said, cool. This guy is always wearing a backpack around. He looks a lot younger than he really is. No offense, Frank. But
at Frank, so
the best thing Frank did is right off the bat, he had a heart to heart with me and he goes, okay, we're not doing banners anymore. Like, what are we going to do to get out of this? And which was none of that was above board. We still like nailed our assignments during the day, but it was what happened after.
Yeah.
So we started staying late and just scheming and coming up with ideas on our own, some of them awful. But we got, I think like a short list of 10 ideas. And when we had enough or we felt good about them, we scheduled a meeting with the CCO at the time. His name was Matt Eastwood. We got a meeting with him and we pitched him 10 ideas and we got lucky. One of those he loved.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, go do it.
There we go.
Yeah. We're like, oh shit. Okay.
Now you gotta do it.
Now we gotta figure that out. Yeah. So that
for like these 10 ideas, were they for like random clients across the agency that they currently had?
It wasn't even that thoughtful. It was like in hindsight, we should have looked at the actual clients we had, but we just went wide. We looked at things that we were passionate about. We looked at just different genres in general. One of those was like clean drinking water charities. Mm-hmm. And so we had a couple ideas like that, and that's the one that Matt picked. So then we had to start cold calling water charities, and that's what started a relationship with Water is Life. That we ended up doing a lot of different hits for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I still quote one of those videos. Was it first world, third world problems?
First world
problems. And yeah, like anytime Jack complains about our 1-bed studio where we're sharing in the East Village, I'm like, dude, just watch the video again. Yeah. So stop complaining.
That one weirdly still hits.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It makes me happy.
Yeah. Incredible. So then you stuck with DDB for a while in New York, right?
Yeah. We had a really good stretch there. It was like 3.5 years where just like the one risk we took of working late nights, even at the time, our boss on State Farm came into our office and he said, if I catch you two working on any of this other extracurricular stuff, you're fired. And I think there's always those moments in your career where like, oof, this is one of those times. Like, what do we do? We decided to say, fuck it. We're just gonna, like, this means enough to us. We took a risk. We showed the right person the ideas, and that bought a safety to get off of State Farm and start working on some of the more prestigious accounts at the time, like New York Lottery or Reebok we won. So it opened up a whole new world for us, taking that risk and just rolling up our sleeves and saying, no, we'll just do it ourselves.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So you weren't scared when he threatened you, this guy?
We were definitely scared. Yeah, we were, but
you had the approval of somebody higher up.
We knew that if we had an idea good enough that he couldn't touch us. So, but the trick was, how do you hide that? And it just took working extra hours. And I think like the most
risk, for sure.
It's a risk, but the most important thing was having someone in it with you, like someone that was equally, like, that had the same motor or like had a chip. Like Frank's incredible because I think he matched the same chip on our shoulder of like, we constantly had something to prove, and like keeping that same motivation. You can find it wherever you want, but like how to keep that same drive, no matter how successful you get. I think that's the secret.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it worked out for both of you. I mean, he's a CEO, you're a CCO.
He's a suit now.
He's a suit now. It's incredible. Like, just for that partnership for you guys to like go off and succeed so much. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Nice. So when did you get to Leo then?
God, yeah.
Can we fast forward a little bit?
Yeah. Quick fast forward. And I'm sorry for such a long-winded backstory.
No, we're chilling. This is good.
Of my entire life.
This is the pod.
Fast forward to Leo Burnett. I'd spent, I think, 12 years in New York. So after DDB, took a shot at Deutsch New York, followed an ECD that was our mentor at the time, Menno. We had a great run at Deutsch, doing the same thing of just really digging in and following that chip, right? Of like any brands that we would encounter where the agency was generally like, oh, stay away from those. Those are the ones that we go, okay, we're going to dig in and we're going to figure it out. And so I think that just set a different precedence for the type of skills that we developed, of way more of like guerrilla style, street fight, scrappy, wearing every different hat required to just make things happen. If anything, the second we heard a no, that was our eyes lighting up, being like, okay, we will figure out a way. So we did that at Deutsch. We went to 360i. We did the same thing. We had a really good run. And if anything, in my life, I always had an itch in the back of my head, which was a homecoming. You know, I grew up in the suburbs of Illinois. It's funny, I say Chicago, but then if you actually know the town, it's like so far out there. Yeah, it's a little cornfield town, Algonquin. But But in the back of my head, like, if you grow up anywhere near Chicago, you know of Leo Burnett. I mean, it is a famous, awesome shop. So there was an inkling in the back of my head of, ooh, what would it be like to get outside of New York, try something different? Yeah. And at that same time, the incredible Liz Taylor flew out to New York and convinced me that it was going to be the next chapter of my career. To join Leo Burnett, to run a massive brand like Bank of America. Again, playing into, I think, a little more of like the chip on my shoulder of like, oh, I've proven that we can do great work on scrappier, smaller scale, but degree of difficulty to do the same caliber of work on a brand that big that no one would see coming. I was up for it. I was game.
Is that the largest bank, Jack? Bank of America? It's got to be one of the larger banks out there. That's research. Yeah, we have research. Jack worked in banking before.
No way. It's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a massive one. And
you said, yeah, I'm going.
I said yes. So my wife and I moved across the country, moved to Chicago, and just started a new adventure.
Where did you live when you got to Chicago?
The West Loop.
Nice.
Yeah, right by a little dog park, Mary Barthélemy Dog Park.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
yeah.
But no, we love West Loop, and my time at Leo Burnett was equally informative. I think it was like almost a record scratch moment on my career of I think for the last 10 years I had really had like a great mentor looking out for me. All of a sudden I was a little more on my own and had to carve my own path once again. But I think if anything, I'm always looking for things that make me slightly uncomfortable in a good way.
Yeah.
Right. And so this was another one of like, okay, I need massive, gnarly brand agency experience, just to flex different muscles.
Right.
And I got that
sure
in spades at Leo Burnett.
And real quick, just gut reaction, I guess, from the New York market at the time versus the Chicago market advertising. Was there different styles? Like, were there big takeaways or stuff that you recognize today, some of the differences between these two markets?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think Chicago advertising in general is like slightly more insular. But that being said, like there's still great agencies there doing great work. I think like from the makeup of Leo Burnett, slightly more of like a humanity, customer service, just like the kindest people on the planet, versus New York. I was used to way more brutal honesty, fast pace, whereas in Chicago, like you get a shot at a slightly slower pace, but the quality work, you can't knock it. Like Leo Burnett works with truly iconic brands. Like for instance, their relationship with Kellogg's at the time was over 50 years old. I mean, it was just a very different speed for me to see into.
Other than the largest bank in the world, potentially, Bank of America, what were some of those other brands that were under your belt there?
Yeah, so I think right off the bat, like for the first year at Leo, the experience running something as large as Bank of America, working with like multi-agency team across a couple offices. I mean, that was the amount I learned just on like the politics and the amount of effort it takes to run that the right way. I'll never regret that. But just who I am, I was itching to also start to flex into new business wins, to work on way scrappier assignments. Again, just like expand different styles, genres, mediums. And that's when I again just started looking at areas where I was passionate about, right? Like way more of like guerrilla mentality of just because there's not per se like perfect briefs coming in doesn't mean I can't on the side go and sniff some of those out.
Right. And what was that one for you at Leo?
That was gun violence. I was such a fan of the work that had been done over the last like 10, 15 years for gun violence, namely like Sandy Hook Promise work on a BBD.
Yep.
I mean, there was part of that really scared me because I almost felt like for a while, I felt like there's no one that can say something different in that space or say it better than what's already been done. And that's when Liz Taylor came to me. She said, "Hey, I have someone I would love for you to talk to." And his name was Manuel Oliver. And he's the father of one of the victims from the Parkland shooting in 2018, the father. And so I had one conversation with him, and that's when it just like, again, ignited such a different energy in me of like, yes, I want to work on the biggest brands, win new business, but also there's something different here that I felt like for the first time, there was a different point of view on gun violence in America that hadn't been said yet.
What was that insight? Like, what was that driving factoid?
Yeah, it was really confronting the NRA and not to really get into all the intricacies of of gun violence and that epidemic in America. But my point of view was a lot of the work was really just highlighting how bad gun violence is, right? Of showing kids running from it in schools, of doing all that, versus really getting to the root of the problem, which is the amount of work that the NRA does to stymie any progress in Congress, right? The amount of lobbying they do to block any and all like basic background checks or all those things. They have such a strong stance on blocking any of that from happening. Like that was kind of the root of anything. And why aren't any of these different organizations, Sandy Hook Promise, like any of those, and even talking to Manuel, Change the Ref, that was his point, is like, we're playing too nice. We're saying things that people already know. We're tiptoeing around it. If you actually expose what this organization is doing, it couldn't be more corrupt and dirty. It's time that we take the gloves off of it. Yeah. And that's when I having just been a fan and studying the work over the years, looked at like the Truth campaign for big tobacco. And I was such a fan of the way that they used creative confrontation to create things that didn't look like ads. If anything, it was like actually doing things in the real world that had a very more like call it venomous vibe to it. It was like, it was a different kind of punch.
Yeah. And who does the Truth campaigns now? Is that?
I think it was 72 for a while back. Yeah, back in the day, it was Crispin and Arnold. Like really great lineage of setting a precedence for that type of work.
So that's like the inspiration for the Lost class. Some of that, and like like that vibe that you wanted to go head on, confront the NRA.
100%. And for me, the shorthand there was I felt like no matter how great the ideas were, where we were falling short as an industry was who we place those ideas in front of. There's you can make the best ad, but if it's just being seen by the usual suspects in our insular community, that's not breaking through. So therefore we said we had to take it one step further and actually expose and confront those responsible. And that's where things got gnarly, of how far were we willing to go to do that. And that's when the idea of the Lost class came to life.
Yeah. What were some of those other ideas that didn't pass through?
Oh my God. It's funny.
The Lost class.
Yeah. We've uncovered even the shortlist. And I was working with some of the best creatives I've ever seen in my entire life. One of those, a team, Katie and Kelly, another one, Matt and Jason. There's a couple other kind of junior creatives in there, Mackenzie and Sophie, but that little SWAT team at Leo, we, over 3 months, we had a short list of absolute bangers of ideas.
And you were leading those teams, right?
Yeah.
At the top level, and you briefed them all, and they came up with as many ideas as they could, and you kind of whittled them down.
Yep. And even the way we briefed was the most radical briefing ever. I said, we are not going to touch this space, this subject, unless we have something that we feel like we are going to get arrested over, we are going to get fired because of. Like, that's the bar right now. Don't come with any ideas that we don't feel that way, or else it's not worth our time. There's too much good work that's been done in this space. We have to do something that adds to the conversation.
Wow.
Yeah. So the level of risk in that is something that, like, we had from the onset. It dictated what we ended up moving forward with.
But for, just being in that room, I can imagine like your boss saying like, create something that might get you fired, like having you as a champion for them, like to take that risk has got to be so exciting. Like, were they pumped and jazzed?
I think they were they were definitely pumped. They were freaked out because I think it's what's always tricky is setting a bar that high. It can sometimes be paralyzing for the wrong creatives. But I think I was working with creatives that I knew were up for the task. And it's I don't know if this is going to translate. The term venomous, it's something that my boss Nils now uses. Like, call it chip on your shoulder, call it a little bit of like the edge or like they were killers. Like they were not bringing ideas that, oh yeah, that works. They were bringing stuff where we're going, oh God, like I don't know how we are going to even begin to think about pulling that off. And that was the last class. It was just a simple statement or like a sentence on a page, which was, we're going to host a graduation for like the 3,044 chairs that represent all the students that didn't get to graduate from gun violence. It's that visual alone. It's an actual physical graduation ceremony. And the but part was what was totally impossible. It was like, yeah, but imagine if we could get an active NRA president or member to stand in front of those chairs and give an address. And that was the part. Was like, we all at first glance were like, yeah, okay, fine. And so we ran with just the harrowing visual alone, almost like the data visualization.
Yeah,
that was powerful enough. But in the back of our minds, we go, it's not enough. We have to turn the corner.
Yeah.
And that's when luck had it. We had one conversation with Brian Buckley at Hungry Man.
Yep.
And Brian is one of the best directors of all time. I mean, they call him like the king of the Super Bowl. And I think it was only someone with that kind of insanity and audacity to not laugh at that little sentence. He goes, I know how we can do it. And that's when we started spitballing.
Yeah.
And it took off from there. And it said, okay, well, in order to get an active NRA president to speak at that type of graduation, you would have to create a university.
This is awesome.
That they would want to speak to. So can you create one overnight? And I said, yep. And we got our design team at Leo Burnett, and we created James Madison Academy.
Yep.
Overnight, literally within 24 hours, we created the entire website. We bought the URL. We even scrubbed Google search results where if you search for it, it looked like it had been there for, I think, 10 years. So we had to create that as fast as we could. We reached out to Sacha Baron Cohen's team from Borat, gave them a hard sell on the idea. They said, okay, we're all in. We're going to become members of James Madison Academy, this fake university. We're going to act as the dean of admissions. We're going to act as all these people. We're going to create the letterheads to start reaching out to these members of the NRA.
So their team, what is their team doing? They're acting as
they're actors. Yeah, but they're pros. I mean, they literally took on the identity of this fake university.
Wow.
And
helped execute
and we got a bite. We got like the president of the NRA who responded, said yes. And we also picked the graduation ceremony. It happened in Vegas. We picked that purposely because we needed kind of a not polarizing city, a place where like red or blue, everyone could agree on at least be able to gamble and have a good time. And so they said yes. They traveled there.
Yeah.
And the rest was history. I don't know if a lot of people know the backstory about like what we had to do to get them to sign the indemnity notices and all that. There was a lot of like go or no go moments where we were on the edge of our seats.
Yeah. I guess like, did any of those guys like get pretty mad and like want to sue?
They were pissed. Yeah, they were pissed. But I also think they couldn't argue with what happened. I mean, they signed everything.
Yeah,
they signed the paperwork, and also, I think they felt embarrassed that they didn't do simple background checks on any of this. But
love it.
Yeah, so that was a project that will forever be with me.
Yeah.
That I think totally changed who I am and the way that I work moving forward. And I think it was actually an interesting segue into what just started the conversations with Uncommon.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, because that's what the award shows, like 1.5 billion impressions, I think, as it launched, probably more now.
Yep.
I mean, it really swept. I remember like studying, like I was just breaking into the industry when you got to Leo. That's when I discovered you. You became on the radar, and then that happened. I'm like, holy crap! This is amazing in this industry.
Yeah.
This like confirmed that this is the right place for me. Of like what you guys were.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And like anytime we can tell that story to the new listeners, like to the new audience that's just breaking in now.
Yeah.
Like that's worthy. I know you probably talked about it a couple times, so it's just really important that people know this stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And there's so much more backstory on the Lust class. Again, like near and dear to my heart, but even having a producer, our head of production, Ashley Geishiker at the time, it was a lot of times it was just her and I alone being like, okay, here's the line. If we cross it, it's almost a point of no return. So there was a point where we didn't have full legal buy-in from bigger publicists.
Yeah.
And that's where we had to go rogue a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was a moment that, thank God I had Ashley, because she's like, fuck it, this idea deserves to go out no matter what. And we go, okay. That's when we started to call CNN. We worked with Tusk, which is a great, like, subversive PR agency. They're like, all right, we're in this no matter what.
Wow.
Against the lawyers, we deactivated some links so people couldn't see links on time, which bought us enough time to go live with it. But again, like that decision, the best things happen when you just say, fuck it, I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to do it. That's the good stuff. Everything lies on the other side of that, which I think Nils and Natalie Musi at Uncommon, they've been doing that for 8 years straight. And I think they saw something in that project, that decision making in general of, if anything, coming off the success from the award shows, it left me wanting more. It left me thinking it can't just be this. Like, what about a whole different bar of ambition and what success looks like? It can't just be within our industry. It has to be, again, extending creativity beyond what's just comfortable within the award show circuit. It has to be real people actually seeing things and remembering it.
Yep.
And so that's where, like, it's such a easy choice to say Uncommon is the place to do that.
Got it. You weren't looking anywhere else? You didn't have any other conversations?
I was curious. And I think part of that was like I think I knew that there was two routes. There was almost the one that I knew laid before, kind of the logical progression at bigger network shops, maybe slightly more comfortable, or like that path. I think I knew the shorthand a little more.
Yeah.
Versus totally changing it up again. And that's what Uncommon did, was like, again, like scrappy, small startup, creativity at the very heart of it. But again, following people that I knew I could learn something again from. And that's Nils, like the most talented, ferocious human on the planet. And again, like you talk about following people, you can never go wrong when you make decisions based off of that.
Yeah. What have you learned from him so far working with him?
Oh man. I'm not making this up. I have learned more in 1 year than I have my entire career.
Wow.
Give
us something. Give us a lesson of some sort.
Yeah. I think, oh my God, I think just in terms of ownership on you yourself, and like whether or not that comes from almost a Rick Rubin point of view on like, you can do it. You might not know how to right now, but like the belief in yourself that no one is probably going to be able to say it better than you can if you roll up your sleeves. And so that, I think Nils and Uncommon bring that to a different level of, for instance, the phrase "no passengers," right? They believe like there's no B team here. There's no waiting for someone else to figure it out. Like the ownership on anyone bringing that point of view on creativity to actually change business, to actually make a difference in the world. There's no waiting around. It's like that hustle mentality. So the no passengers things also applies to clients. Like I think what we spend our time on is potentially a missed opportunity somewhere else. So just being so careful about who we partner up with, right? Like making sure we're all in it together for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah, you were going to tell us like some of those new clients that you have here in New York. Do you want to revisit those? I think we skipped over that.
God, this is where I think I might be able to get into some trouble. I'm going to have to hold off.
Damn, almost got it.
I know.
I respect it.
But again, I think it's like,
will you break the the news with us?
I would love
The
to.
exclusive?
How do we do that?
Just tell me off the record, and
Okay.
then
All right.
we'll publish it when it's ready.
I would love to. Yeah. Because I think like as
You gotta work a little. You gotta
as
work hard.
as great of a first year
Yeah.
that we've had, all of a sudden right now it's been turbocharged. It is like another level. But again, like Uncommon's ambition is unlike any other agency out there. We don't even say agency, it's a studio. I really mean that. I'm not just making that up. But
Wonderful. How can people say what's up to you if they have any questions or want to talk or learn more about Uncommon Studio, Creative Studio?
yeah. LinkedIn messages is one way. Email.
Yeah.
I think the amount of respect that I have for getting lucky and having the right mentors, working on different people. I want to be that for other people, not only at Uncommon, but anyone that needs advice. Like, I might not always have the best answer, but at least from my own experience, I do know the importance of separating God-given talent from hustle. I think passion and hustle can literally get you 99% of the way there. There's always going to be freaks of nature that can just come up with an idea on the spot. But I just think having the right energy and outlook, having the healthy dose of that venom and having that chip on your shoulder, that is crucial.
Love it. All right, Sam. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been
Crushed
awesome.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it.